before they were murderers. And they joined a group in the church called the penitents, the penitentes. So you had the faithful, the penitents, and the catechumens. 3 classes of people in the early church. And the penitents were the ones that were coming back, being reconciled back into community. So we developed it just as the early Jewish Christian church of St. Matthew developed. That's a natural thing to have. To deal with the difficult situation, but the will is always reconciliation. So, now that's the bigger issue. The smaller issue, but it's not a small issue, it is, how often should I forgive my sister or brother if they offend me? Well, if we're counting, we haven't forgiven, have we? If we're calculating, it's not the name of the game. And it's a crucial thing to community. It's crucial. I'll never forget, I studied St. Augustine. I love St. Augustine. I read all his homilies. And when he's talking to the people of his parish, he says the three things that he really complains about all the time, or not complains about, but challenges people on, getting drunk, visiting prostitutes, and holding grudges, not forgiving. Now you sort of think, oh yes, I can see the other 2, but not forgiving is up there with them. Because when we're not forgiving, we're not free. We're not open to the kingdom. So Jesus sees it as crucial. And in our experience of life, I think we do know it's crucial. When we can't forgive, we know we're blocked. We're not free. We understand that from our experience of life. And so we're called into what some people say is a forgiving lifestyle. That's where the people that don't hold grudges, we're the people that our hearts are open with compassion, trying to forgive. Now, of course, there will be things that happen in our life where we're hurt or damaged or whatever, and forgiveness is hard. And that's a massive journey. But it's the journey we know to be free, we all have to take. Now, the 77 times 7 is probably taken from Genesis chapter 4, verse 24, where this Lamech has this poem about how he a man wounded him, so he killed him. A boy hit him, so he killed him. Dreadful, most dreadful. And it was that violence in the world is getting worse and worse and worse. And so there's a phrase in that, if Cain is avenged 7 times, truly Lamech 77 times. So that phrase is lifted from there and placed on Jesus' lips. That's how often we must forgive, which is limitless, of course. And then we have the parable of the king. Now, this king must be a Gentile king because Jewish law forbade the sale of a wife and goods to repay a debt. Now, I suppose the biggest thing in this story is how the talents, the innumerable talents, and then the petty forgiveness, it's a couple of months' work, but if you look at the story itself, and you see how many talents there are, it's something like, I've got 10,000 or something. Now, 10,000 it is. Now, do you know what? 10,000 is extraordinary because King Herod the Great, who had all this property, the annual income was only 900 talents. So 10,000 is just unbelievable sum of money. What does that mean, really? It means something like this, and I'll read this from a wonderful writer. It says, those grasped by the kingdom must realize the sea of divine forgiveness in which they've been plunged. Now, that to me says it all. We're in we're blessed and constantly blessed to know we're forgiven. And God's mercy is everywhere. There's no sin that's not forgivable. And to have that sense deep within us of the freedom of the children of God is a most wonderful thing in this world where people are burdened by guilt and burdened by memories of things they've done and all of that. So we've got to absolutely know that what God wants is mercy, not sacrifice. We're ever merciful, ever compassionate. If we're to reflect the kingdom, that's how we are. That we can't help but be anything but that. We're not into unforgiving attitudes at all. So that's the extraordinary thing about that particular parable. And now just a few words. I'll move on to the third thing, and I won't spend much time here. What we're looking at now are the costly values of the kingdom. We've seen some of the beautiful things about the kingdom, but it takes a bit from us. We have to give, and it's costly, the kingdom. So the first thing is there's the new vision of family. And so we'll look a tiny bit at divorce and a tiny bit at being eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom. Now, once we get to this question of divorce, Matthew changes Mark's question slightly by adding. Now, Mark's question is it against the law for a man to divorce his wife? Matthew adds, on any pretext whatsoever. So there's a slight shift into, are there any grounds for divorce really? What are the grounds for divorce? So it's not just looking at what the law says, it's what do you think? And then Jesus goes into this extraordinary thing and says, quoting Genesis, from the beginning. If you look at how God means it, God's will for us in creation, not just from any culture, the Jewish culture or whatever culture, but if you look at what God's will is for the human family, it is that there won't be divorce. This is the ideal, of course. We must understand that. The ideal is, God means it from the beginning, that there will be a man and a woman faithful to each other. And that's the original vision. And then faithfulness to each other is a sign of the kingdom. Faithfulness is a sign of God's kingdom. So it is rather beautiful. Of course, we're not going to go into it here, but we know that reality means that the ideals we have sometimes bump up against difficult, challenging situations. And the Lord knows that too, as we saw in the Sermon on the Mount. But just here, he's talking about the ideal. Eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom. Well, here, he's really talking about, it is possible for somebody to be so caught up with this treasure found in the field, this pearl of great price, that they can devote their whole life to that. That's all. That's what he's saying. And then the final thing about these families is about children. And here we see that in Matthew's community, children have a special place, which is a little bit unlike the synagogue, because synagogues had a place for women upstairs and male children under 12 had no place